Hey guys! This week is another series. We're going to be talking about Anna Nicole Smith, and this was originally on my TikTok. I'm putting it up here now just because I feel like this is probably one of the series that needs to go on YouTube sooner rather than later, just because of TikTok guidelines and all of that. But I worked really hard on this series. I love it. It's a great one. And if you enjoy it, please leave a like. Leave any comments if you have any suggestions for new series, additions that you want to add about Anna Nicole Smith that I might have left out, or any thoughts or opinions, anything like that. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoy these series, please subscribe. I am going to be posting every week. So without further ado, let's talk about Anna Nicole. Miss Anna Nicole Smith is a Sagittarius sun, a Libra moon, and a Libra rising, which to me makes perfect sense. Marilyn Monroe has always been one of her biggest idols ever since she was a kid. Her aunt says she saw a resemblance between them, and she just became so obsessed with Marilyn. I think this is the case with a lot of people, but Anna Nicole also loved Marilyn. And people do say that she also had said that she always knew she would die young, like Marilyn. And I don't know that that's 100% true. You can fact check me on that, but it is interesting if it is true. And depending on who you ask about Anna Nicole, you will get a very different response of opinion and also probably a very different story about her life. But she wasn't super well liked at the time of death. She was very controversial during her life, but she has become even more famous after death. And like I said, there's a lot of stories about her out there, good and bad. There was lots of rumors circulating when she was alive and when she died, and it's hard to know what really was true. She lived a very mysterious life, you could say, except for the legal stuff, of course. We have records of that. So I've decided I'm just going to put in all the bad stuff, all the good stuff, and we can all just come out with whatever we think is true or not true, what we think of her. Of course, she can't be all good or all bad because she's a human being, but we'll just all come out with our own opinions on this. I also know there's a lot of people who feel very strongly about Anna Nicole, either good or bad, and probably know more about her than I do because they've probably been very into her life for a very long time. And you're free to add facts or add opinions in the comments. I welcome it because that way people can read the comments and get more information. So go for it. And in the next part, we're going to talk about her childhood, and most of that information comes from either her cousins, her childhood friends, or her half-sister Donna, who wrote a book about her later in life. So Anna Nicole was actually not born Anna Nicole. She was born Vicki Lynn Hogan, and she was her mother's only child, but she had 5 half-siblings on her father's side. So Vicky's, Anna Nicole's, I guess we'll call her Vicky while she's a kid. We'll switch to Anna Nicole later on. Vicky's parents broke up when she was only 2. Her father was accused of beating and mentally abusing her mother, including while she was pregnant, but the real kicker is that he was accused and pled guilty to the statutory R wording of an underage girl and another underage girl, her mother's sister, who was 10 years old at the time, her Aunt Kay. Her father was known to be an alcoholic, and Donna, her half-sister, has said that he was very abusive. Anna didn't really grow up with her father, but Donna did. She also had another half-sister named Amy, and apparently, according to Donna, Amy was always jealous of Anna and would be very mean to her, but Anna didn't really pay her any mind. So since her father was not in the picture, she was raised by her mother mainly at first. She was a police officer and apparently very strict, disciplined, religious, which I feel like makes sense for being a police officer, kind of what you would expect. And despite the fact that her dad was not in the picture, and obviously he was not a good person, people say she still had a very hard childhood. Her friends said that she was never allowed to go out. She always was staying home and doing chores, which sounds difficult, but I think there's also just a troubled family life going on there, clearly, more than just staying home and doing chores. Her mother did remarry, though, and they started living with her stepfather and 2 step-siblings. One of her stepsisters, Shauna, was apparently not Vicky's favorite at all, did not really like her, not even a little. Donna, her half-sister, has said she thinks that she saw her as competition, and she also ended up marrying very rich and becoming even richer than Anna, which I'm sure pissed her off. Donna even said that she disliked Shauna to the point where when she got leukemia at one point, she wouldn't even talk to her then. She straight up ignored her, which that is a next level of dislike. However, her mother and her stepfather have said that even though they may have been strict, even though she might not have liked her stepsister, they tried their best to provide a good, stable, healthy environment for her growing up. But Anna just really didn't like it there. So Vicky really was not happy at home with her mother and her stepfather. Her half-sister Donna said that Anna always thought that her mother hated her because she was her biological father's child, who of course she hated for good reason. And apparently Vicky would attempt to actually meet her dad. She'd sneak out of the house to try and find information about him, to try and find him, and that of course made her mom very angry. And I don't think that Vicky understood what was going on there. I don't think she understood the reason that her parents broke up or the, severity of his actions. I think that she just thought her mom was not liking her dad because it's her ex. In reality, it was much more than that. There may have been other reasons that she didn't like her home life, though, because she did say in interviews later in life that there was whippings, beatings, R-wordings while she was living with her mother and her stepfather, not her biological father. And Ray Martino, her friend, who was a director, said that she had cried to him and told him about the abuse that she had suffered in her past before. And of course, her mother and her stepfather deny any of this happening, but we can't really know the truth. We do know, though, that her half-sister Donna really did not like the way that she portrayed their family in interviews, specifically not the abuse allegations, but she would refer to them as like white trash, and that's offensive. It is. It makes sense why she was offended by that. But she said, that Vicky had always liked them growing up and always wanted them around even when she was first becoming famous, but at some point she cut them off, and we'll talk about that later. Growing up, though, they said she was very shy, she was very sweet. She even had this cute little voice that she would do with teachers that often got her out of trouble, which I don't have that, so it sounds nice. And they did say that even when she was this big personality, big celebrity, she still had that shy, small-town girl side to her. And then for 9th grade, she went to Aldine High School in Houston, but that would not last long. So appearance-wise, her family and friends described her as very flat-chested and super tall. She's almost 6 feet tall, which is great for modeling. But at the time, boys were not interested in her really, and she was very jealous of the girls who were getting a lot of boy attention, which, it's totally understandable. So in 9th grade at Aldine High, according to her half-sister Donna, Vicky starts hanging out with a group of bad boys. Bad boys. But not bad boys, like actually, bad boys, who were apparently always sneaking out and doing drugs and drinking, which we can only guess whether she was doing them with them or not, and occasionally even hitting her, according to her half-sister. Unfortunately, one night after sneaking out with a boy, she got caught by her mom, and that's when they decided to send her to live with her aunt in Mejia. So she was living with her aunt, her uncle, and 2 of her cousins, and her Aunt Kay was actually like a mom to her. She actually called her Mama, whereas her biological mom she called Mother, which is much more formal. And apparently she would even tell some people that Aunt Kay was her real mom after being R-worded by her father when she was 10. That crime is real. That crime was committed by her biological father. However, she was 10 at the time, so it's unlikely that she's actually got pregnant or is her real mother. But apparently Vicky liked to throw in some little lies here and there to keep things spicy, which that's not a little lie by my standards at least, but I think she really just wanted her Aunt Kay to be her mom. And her half-sister Donna said that sometimes she would even tell people that Marilyn Monroe was her real mom, which Marilyn died 5 years before Vicky was born, but I think that wasn't something she expected people to take as a fact. It was more of a calling back to their similarities sort of thing. Economically, they were not any better off in Mejia. They were very poor. They were on food stamps. She even stole toilet paper for them at times. And to be clear, Mejia is a tiny town, as in 7,000 people, tiny. Even her cousins have said that if you really want to do anything, you have to go to Waco, which is their closest city. And as somebody from Texas, who I'm actually going to Waco tomorrow, Waco is not a huge city. It's not a huge city. I mean, there's stuff to do there, but not that much. It's not some sort of metropolis. So she's in Mexia. There's not a lot to do there. Shelly, her cousin, was one of her best friends. She said they would always put on clothing and model, because, of course, Anna Nicole always wanted to be a model and an actress, and she achieved that. However, in school, she apparently did not have a lot of friends. Supposedly, she would tell girls that she could steal their boyfriends if she wanted to, and they did not like that, which, go figure. So she was not generally liked, supposedly. And after transferring to Mexia to finish up her freshman year of high school, she actually failed that year and then ended up dropping out her sophomore year. Vicky said that a boy had beat her up, which is why she wanted to drop out. Her half-sister Donna thinks that she was just generally miserable. Of course, we know that she didn't have a lot of friends and she may have been bullied. I'm sure being beat up by a boy could be part of being miserable in a high school. So her half-sister, though, basically thinks that she would have always quit when she was 16, no matter what. And to be clear, 16 was when she was legally allowed to drop out of high school. And after that, she set about getting a job, and one of her best friends was working at Jim's Crispy Fried Chicken, which they call Crispies. And often she would just sit in the restaurant and just hang out with her friend there, because, again, there's not much to do in this town. So then she got a job at Crispy's, and that is where she met Billy Wayne Smith. Billy Wayne was a fry cook, and he was also a high school dropout. But despite the fact that Vicky said she always wanted to get out of Mexia, she really fell in love with Billy Wayne. So in April of 1985, Vicky, who was only 17, and Billy, who was actually only 16, got married. And even though she was very in love with him, their paths did not align. Her half-sister said that Billy was very simple-minded. He wanted a simple life. He just wanted to settle down in Mexia. Whereas Vicky wanted to make something of herself. She wanted to be a star. And Billy actually did end up living in Mexia his whole life. And not too long after they got married, Vicky became pregnant. In January of 1986, their son Daniel was born, and Vicky was 18, but she was ecstatic. She loved that she had made this human and she was taking care of him. He was her whole world. And Daniel would always be important to Vicky, even when she became Anna Nicole. Her whole life, Daniel was her world. But Billy Wayne was not going to last forever. Such a beautiful picture, but obviously I have to cover up that part with my head. Sorry, everyone. So when Vicky, soon to be Anna Nicole, was 19, her and Billy Wayne split up. And she has said that he was abusive to her. So of course she left, which is the right thing to do. She moved to Houston, she took Daniel with her, and she moved in with her mother and her stepfather again. And I know that people are probably thinking, if she hated living with her mother and her stepfather so much the first time around, why would she move back in with them? But remember, she is a high school dropout, and her only previous work experience is at the Crispy's Fried Chicken joint. So it's probably going to be difficult for her to find employment, plus finding housing that was affordable for her would be difficult as well. Not to mention, she has a kid to take care of. So at first she got a job at Walmart, then she moved to Red Lobster, but she ended up quitting both of those jobs because they just weren't bringing in the kind of money that she needed at that point. Imagine if this was your Red Lobster server. Just imagine it. Just, what would you do? Anyways, Billy was not paying child support, and she really needed more money than what she was currently getting at those jobs. So she left Daniel with her mother, and she moved into her own apartment. And in 1988, she started a job at Rick's Cabaret, which is a strip joint. I was going to use another photo, but I didn't think that TikTok would let me. This is a much more wholesome photo than the one I was going to use, but we're going to go with it. I'm not sure that this is time accurate, though. So when she originally applied to Rick's Cabaret, she was actually applying as a waitress. However, when she came for the interview, the manager said that he could just tell that she was a star, she had charisma, and he thought she'd do great as a stripper. So he hired her for that. And in that role, she was able to make more money, and she was able to make it faster, which, fair enough, if you have a kid to support, go for it. And she got pretty damn good at it. She performed under different names, mainly Nikki and Robin, and they said she was really sweet with customers, really great with people, and great at dancing. The one issue that she faced at the strip club, though, at least when she first started, was that they were pretty mean to her about her body. They said that she stood out because she was bigger than the other girls, and they made her work the daytime shifts because they have standards. Imagine making Anna Nicole Smith do the daytime shift because you have standards. They also told her that she needed boobs that were proportionate to her body if she wanted to succeed, and really pushed her to get a boob job, which she did end up doing. So when she had started stripping, she had about an A cup. They pushed her to get a boob job, and when she went in on something, she went full in, and so here we see the results of that. Big difference. And not only is that a big difference appearance-wise, but if you think about it, that is a large amount of weight to just suddenly be putting on your body. However, she does say that at this time she felt like she got her body, like it was the first body she'd ever had. This was the first that she'd ever felt like her, and she did succeed partially due to her body, and she has said that everything that she has is because of them. Supposedly before she stripped, she would often do Valium and Xanax, and I don't know if that was just kind of to take herself out of it, but she said that she always looked at stripping as a way to get into show business. So she was performing kind of as a character. She was this sweet, naive, shy, small town Texas girl, which her friends have said that's what she was like as a kid, but she found this as her stage persona, essentially. And despite the fact that she was a good dancer, apparently she did get fired, at least from Rick's, a few times at the start because she would fall down. Maybe she was a little bit clumsy, I'm not sure, but they'd always rehire her because she was awesome. She also got jobs at a couple other strip joints as well, the Executive Suite and Gigi's. And the owner of Rick's actually mentioned that Anna was bi, that he had seen her with women, and her cousins also confirmed that they had seen her have relationships with women. And this is the woman that I think in particular people have heard about. Her name is Sandy Powledge, and she claims that her and Anna had a relationship for about 3 years. She said that they met in a gay bar, and at first they were just friends, but then a relationship developed between them. And she says that they were sleeping together for about 3 years, and I'm not sure if that goes into her time with J. Howard Marshall, who she's about to meet in this timeline, because some people say that these two met in 1991, which is when she met J. Howard Marshall, but Sandy has never been clear on the timeline. So then in October of 1991, Anna Nicole Smith meets J. Howard Marshall at Gigi's Cabaret when she is 24 years old and he's 86. Also, I said I was going to call her Vicky until she changed her name to Anna Nicole, but honestly, it's just getting a little too confusing, so we're going to just start calling her Anna Nicole now. That way we don't have to keep switching back and forth because I know I've been doing it. So it's 1991. Anna meets J. Howard Marshall at Gigi's Cabaret while she's stripping. And J. Howard Marshall, who was 86 at this point, was known to like strippers. But most notably, he was rich with oil money, specifically through Koch Industries, and that's not Coca-Cola, it's Koch, in the 60s. He was rich beyond belief and extremely well known in Houston and worth somewhere in the billions at this point. He was widowed at this point in his life, but he had dated another stripper before. Her name was Lady Walker, and they met when she was 40, and she was doing a strip routine with her 18-year-old daughter. You heard that right. It's highly strange. But he liked her, and they dated for 10 years. Lady ended up dying, though, of complications when she was doing a facelift surgery, and J. Howard said that it was the most tragic thing that had ever happened to him. And that was only amplified by the fact that she listed another dude as the love of her life on her will, which, yeah, ouch, that sucks. Even though he did know that she was sleeping with other men, it still sucks. And after finding out that he wasn't the love of her life, he actually sued her. She was dead already, but he sued her post-mortem for all of the things that he had given her while they were dating, which is a very bitter move indeed. And while, of course, he was spoiling not only Lady, but his late wife, it was clear that it wasn't just them constantly asking for things. He was also a very generous guy because he had a shit ton of money and he liked them. And he was about to fall madly in love with Anna. Anna said that when she first met him, she saw him across the room and he looked like he had no will to live in his eyes. Which, I mean, I guess he's super old, but I mean, I hope when I'm that old, I still have the will to live in my eyes. But she went over to see him and she said that he got a twinkle in his eye and she danced for him. I mean, she stripped for him, but it's sweet to think of the twinkle. At first, she said that they were just friends. She may have been dating other people. It was rumored she was dating Clay Spires, who was a bodybuilder, and she may have been dating Sandy also at that time. So she was kind of had other partners. So even if they were kind of in a relationship, it was not exclusive at that point. Still, he would often apparently slip her money across the table in envelopes, like thousands, when she was visiting with him. So, of course, when Anna Nicole started dating J. Howard Marshall, she was immediately being spoiled by him like crazy because, of course, he had the money to do so. He was a generous man. He got her jewelry, a ranch, a horse for the ranch, multiple actually, a Mercedes, and another boob job. He did ask her to quit stripping, and she did at his request, and they stayed in a relationship. And she said that he was super funny and amazing, and she loved him so much. And even her childhood friends said that they were very affectionate to one another, and they leaned on each other a lot. And here they are being affectionate. And on her end, I think it was that she loved being taken care of by him, and he loved giving her things and having a companion. And he was obviously super in love with her. He proposed to her multiple times from the beginning, including once at Red Lobster. How romantic. But she did turn him down all the time. For one, she had not finalized her divorce with Billy Wayne yet, but also she wanted to make something of herself before she married him. She said she really wanted to be able to support herself financially and have made something of herself before they got married. And for a while, she didn't even want people to know that they were dating at all because she didn't want it to seem like she had gotten any of her opportunities from dating him. And she was about to get a lot of opportunities. And supposedly the relationship was never consummated. They never slept together because he was so old that it was kind of impossible for him to do that at that point, which fair enough. But they did do a lot of activities together. Some say that he was more like a grandfather figure to her, but she says that it was love. And she talks more about it later after he has passed away in kind of a different sense. But at the time, she said it was love. And she did call him Pawpaw and Poopsie Baby. Those were her nicknames for him, which honestly, those do sound like nicknames for a grandfather. But she behaved nothing like a granddaughter would. She did still strip for him privately, even though she had quit the club. Her cousin even told this story about how they were going out once. And she said, "Oh, just give me 2 minutes. I need to go and strip for him real quick, and then we can leave." There was also an interesting rumor that that he enjoyed for her to bounce her bare boobs on his bald head. Those words came out of my mouth, and I did not like the way that it felt. So we're going to move past it. We're going to forget that I said it, almost, but we probably won't be able to. And now that we have a good overview of the relationship, we'll talk about how Anna really made her way into fame. March 1992, Anna sees an ad in the paper for a Playboy test photo shoot, and her friend really encourages her to go out for it. There are also some stories that say that her boyfriend at the time, who was a bodybuilder, submitted the pictures of her, but there's no real confirmation of that. Whoever did it, she had a lot of support from everyone around her to go out for it. But she apparently actually canceled the test shoot 4 times before she actually went through with it because she was just very nervous, and supposedly she knew that once you shoot for Playboy, you can't really go back out into the real world. Like, you are always going to be a playmate. They loved her photos though, and they asked her to go to LA for another test shoot. And in her questionnaire that she did at that test shoot, she wrote for her aspirations in life that she wanted to be a playmate and have a daughter, and she was able to accomplish both of those, so that's really nice. Not all the casting directors were immediately fond of her though. Some of them actually said that she was overweight and that she needed to lose some weight before she could be in the magazine. Luckily, those people were overruled because what a fool. What a fool. And she showed them, and
Apparently, she was only 160 pounds at the time and almost 6 feet tall. So tell me how that reads as overweight. My brain can't compute that. One of the casting directors, though, said that she was the most beautiful girl that she had ever seen without makeup. And I think that's a more accurate depiction of Anna there. Another thing we learned from her time with Playboy is that her boobs had become incredibly uncomfortable for her. One of her boobs actually kept getting infected and she kept having to have that implant replaced, which I can only imagine how painful that is. However, unfortunately, I do think that this pain is what started the pill addictions. She did do amazing at Playboy, though. So amazing that they had actually planned for somebody else to be in the magazine, and they bumped them out to put in Anna Nicole. And they were planning on someone else being the centerfold, but they decided actually she should be the centerfold. And she was. May 1992, Playmate of the Month. And this photo shoot was actually inspired by Jane Mansfield, who, if you've seen my Hugh Hefner series, she was actually on the cover of one of the first Playboy covers, and she was an actress. The photographers absolutely adored her. They said she was so sexy and sultry, and she just lit up in front of the camera. So basically, this girl knew how to work her angles. So some fun things that the crew who worked with her on Playboy noted about her was, one, she loved to eat, specifically fried chicken and pie, which, great taste, Anna. She also loved champagne, and she would always have a glass or two of champagne on sets. And after seeing her first shoot, Guess was actually very interested in her. Guess, the brand. But before we move on to them, this cover in particular is from Anna Nicole Smith being Playmate of the Year in 1993. And while she was in LA shooting for this cover, she actually stayed in a house that Marilyn Monroe had stayed in, which, if you're somebody who loves Marilyn Monroe, like Anna, would have been a dream. She got a brand new Jaguar and $100,000 for winning Playmate of the Year. And in addition to the cover, there was a video that was released along with it about Anna Nicole. In that video, she actually goes back to Mahia and is posing in front of her high school, and they have clips of people who knew her when she was younger talking about her. Unfortunately, though, some of them just said that she was built like a boy when she was younger, which is kind of a rude thing to say when you know it's going to be publicized worldwide, basically, about that person, but she laughed it off and said, well, I have a fantastic body now, so. There's another section of the video where she talks about how amazing her life is going and how she even found her biological father. Apparently, when she got enough money, she actually set to hunting him down, found him, and there's actually a clip with him in it in that video where he's talking about how proud he is of her, which personally I find a little bit unsettling just knowing what we know about him, but whatever. He can still be proud of his daughter, I guess. And to be fair, there was a lot to be proud of. She also signed with the William Morris Talent Agency after she got Playmate of the Year, and that's a big deal. She did have an incident during her time with Playboy, though. She was at home, and the photo editor, Marilyn Grabowski, called her, and she couldn't really understand what Anna was saying because she was slurring her words, but she gathered that she was in the jacuzzi at her house. And lo and behold, they find her at her house in her jacuzzi, completely naked, with most of a wine bottle polished off. And according to her maid, she had been there all day, so I'm guessing multiple wine bottles. And of course, she was not really at her best. So they had to drag her out of the jacuzzi, as you could probably imagine. Still, she did wonderful at Playboy overall. They really loved her, and she was fantastic on set. I mean, super photogenic. Here she is in her Guess jeans ad in 1993. And she actually replaced Claudia Schiffer as the face of Guess. And of course, that's a big deal. And she really felt like she had made it, which she had. And finally here, after me calling her Anna for many, many videos, is when she decided to actually be called Anna Nicole, because she was Vicky before then, but it was getting too difficult. Now she is Anna Nicole. And her aunt said that she had always wanted a different name because she just wanted a different life. And once again, photographers noticed that she looked a lot like Jane Mansfield, so a lot of her shoots are inspired by Jane Mansfield. She was becoming super famous now. She was becoming a big supermodel, And she's very wealthy. She had a ranch and multiple houses at this point, and I think people were a little bit confused on how she was becoming so wealthy so quickly, even though she had big things happening for her. But the answer was at least partially J. Howard Marshall. And I say this because he did get her that ranch and jewelry and a lot of gifts, which would contribute to the external view of wealth that the public was seeing. She was obviously very wealthy at this point in her own right, but part of the wealth that she was showing to the public was because of him. And in May of 1993, she is finally divorced from Billy Wayne. It did not end on good terms, by the way. Supposedly, they were not fond of each other at the end, even in a friendly way. Also in 1993, she modeled for H&M and for the cover of Marie Claire. But unfortunately, in February of 1994, Anna had her first overdose. It actually wasn't just Anna, though. It was her and a friend. They overdosed at a hotel after having an argument, supposedly. And the cause of the overdose was a mix between Vicodin, Xanax, and a bunch of alcohol, which, yeah, that'll get you. And of course, the tabloids were going to go after her for this big time. She did comment eventually and said that, she does take Vicodin and Xanax, but she doesn't consider those hard drugs. It doesn't make her high, and she's been taking them for years. It's just insomnia and migraines, and she has to take them. And around this time, we do know that she was also taking medication for the pain that her breasts were giving her because her implants were too heavy. In March of 1994, Anna plays a role in the Hudsucker Proxy, and she also is in Naked Gun, The Final Insult. Unfortunately, as beautiful as she looks in this picture, she did win a Raspberry for that role. Worst new star. So that sucks a little. At this point, we are in May of 1994. So Anna had a housekeeper or possibly a babysitter. Different reports say different things. Anyways, her name was Maria, and she clearly was helping Anna out around the house and with her kid. And Maria claimed that while they were on a business trip in Vegas, she had gotten back to the hotel. She had been drinking a lot. She goes into her room, and Anna's agent is in there saying that Anna needs her to stay in her room with her. And I guess she thought that it might be work-related, so she did go to Anna's room. At that point, she threw up, and Anna apparently grabbed her, took her to the bed, and was kissing her. And it was also doing other things touching-wise, and Maria said she didn't want to do that, but Anna kept going. Of course, Maria ends up suing Anna for sexual harassment, and she said that after this event, she was so ashamed that she had not been able to get work, and she even had tried to end her own life a few times. And while she was dating J. Howard Marshall at this time, supposedly there was nothing sexual between them, and she was still hooking up with Sandy at this time, I also think. And J. Howard Marshall's secretary had caught her making out with Maria before. Obviously, Anna is just open with her sexuality, and it seems like she wasn't having a sexual relationship with J. Howard Marshall, so she was exploring other options in that realm outside of it. Of course, Anna denied all of these claims of her doing anything remotely non-consensual with Maria, and said that the tabloids were making everything out to be way more than it was, and she didn't know why Maria would have ever said anything like that. However, Anna did say later on that she had fantasies about sexual encounters with hired help as like a dominance sort of thing, which I'm not sure why she would say after this had come out, because that doesn't really make the story look good at all. But I guess she's just speaking her truth. And at this point, unfortunately, Anna Nicole loses her Guess ad campaign. Her career was, of course, not looking that great at this moment, and the tabloids were after her constantly. She had this legal issue going on, which was a big source of stress, and she was in constant physical pain because of her implants. All of this spiraled her into depression, where she didn't really want to leave the house anymore, supposedly. And then in June of 1994, Anna finally marries J. Howard Marshall. And of course, since she was about 27 and he was 89, a lot of people questioned why she was marrying him. Some people thought that she married him because her career had had a downtick at this point. Other people thought that she chose this point to marry him because she knew he didn't have a lot of time left. She, however, said that she loved him and age did not matter, and that it was not for money at all, and that she had plenty of money before she married him, and she had actually turned him down before because she wanted to make something of herself before they got married, so it wasn't about that. Her friends did say, though, that part of the reason she wanted to marry him was to keep her promise to him that she would marry him, which she had told him that she would, especially since she knew that he was getting old. I mean, he started out old, but he was getting older, and maybe he didn't have a lot of time left, so she wanted to complete that promise to him before he left the world. And people did say around her that they saw that they seemed very happy together, that they would laugh together all the time, and that they even did PDA. And she said, "It just so happens that I get turned on by liver spots," which I don't know if she was joking or not, but they both seem to be happy at this point. However, he was 89 at this point, like I mentioned, and he was in a wheelchair and pretty much bound to that wheelchair. He did try and stand during the ceremony, but he was unable to. And one of his assistants said that Anna always would claim that he could walk if he wanted to. He's just, being lazy. And his assistant thought, he definitely can't. He's 89 and he's ailing. And she felt that it was actually cruel that Anna was trying to make him stand up at all. And Anna did not invite any of her family to this wedding. Of course, Daniel was there, though, and J. Howard Marshall even talked about wanting to adopt Danny at the wedding. Unfortunately, Anna did have to leave right after the ceremony because she had a modeling job in Greece. And, of course, the way the tabloids made it out was basically that she shot him the peace sign and is walking away laughing on her flight while he's sitting there in his wheelchair and crying. And there are photos of him crying in his wheelchair when she leaves, which, of course, don't make Anna look like the best new bride. But we don't know the whole situation, so there's that. She may have cried on her flight. I don't know. However, after the wedding, she pretty much lived full-time in LA, and he lived in Houston, and then she would sometimes visit him, and he would sometimes visit her. And while some people said that she was very loving and caring over him, other people said that she was fooling around with other people, even after they got married, and that they never shared a bed. In fact, her former driver told a story about her being really rude when J. Howard Marshall suggested getting into her bed once. So from the minute they got married, Pierce Marshall, J. Howard Marshall's son, hated Anna. And he really just wanted her to get the hell out of his father's life. She even called J. Howard at one point to tell him that your son does not like me, he's being mean to me, and I honestly feel like it would have been better off if I hadn't married you because he's just being horrible to me. And frankly, I don't think that most of his secretaries and assistants liked her either. One incident that his secretary talks about with Anna was that they were out shopping for jewelry and he wasn't really interested or into the shopping, I guess, and she got annoyed. His secretary claims that at that point she gave him a Valium, which she had told Anna multiple times before that he could not have under any circumstances because it would be horrible for him. Apparently after that, she ended up walking out of the store with $1 million of jewelry purchased, and he was slumped over in his wheelchair, barely conscious. But again, of course, these are people that are on J. Howard Marshall's side of things. People who knew Anna and were friends with her said that she was very caring to him, almost like a caregiver, and tended to him all the time. In August of 1994, a couple of months after her marriage to J. Howard Marshall, this New York Magazine issue comes out, White Trash Nation, with a picture of Anna, which she did not consent to being used on the cover. She did sue them, and they settled the suit in October of that year. She sued them for $5 million because she felt that this was damaging to her reputation. Personally, I think it's a pretty cute photo, but I can see how she didn't like the white trash part. In December of 1994, we discovered that J. Howard Marshall is not doing well at all. He has stomach cancer, and he's clearly dying. She was shooting in Las Vegas for the movie To the Limit at the time, and apparently as soon as she found out, she flew down to be with him. However, he had been hospitalized, and his son, Pierce Marshall, had been granted legal guardianship, and then he had a caregiver, Betty Harding, who was taking care of him mostly while Pierce handled the legal affairs. And Pierce's power of attorney would change Anna's life and her relationship with J. Howard Marshall. What many people believe happened is that Pierce cut Anna out of the will after he had legal guardianship of his father and tried to keep her away from him as much as possible. We at least know for sure that Pierce used his power of attorney to cut Anna off financially during that time when J. Howard Marshall was sick, so she was no longer getting her bills paid or her $50,000 a month like Howard had been giving her. J. Howard Marshall is ill, and Pierce Marshall, his son, has legal guardianship of him at this point. She was only allowed to visit him for 30 minutes at a time, supposedly under the doctor's instructions, but she felt that it was actually just that his family did not want her to be able to see him. Pierce had also hired armed guards for the house, which they say is also Anna's house, but she wasn't really living in it. She was living in LA. So it's more like Howard's house. But either way, they were literally pushing her out of the house and intimidating her to get off the grounds. Betty Harding, his caregiver, said that it was her who wanted the guards because everything around J. Howard Marshall getting sick was very public, and of course everyone knew that he was extremely wealthy, and it was just her and him in the house the majority of the time. So she felt like she was a little bit afraid of being alone in that house just in case, there's a robbery or something like that. Of course, Anna and her friends believed that they were trying to keep Anna out. Anna also started having really bad seizures at this time. Her lawyer at the time said that it was from migraine pills that she was taking, but her friend Ray Martino said that it was really the stress of the illness that was ravaging J. Howard Marshall, and knowing that he was nearing his end, she was in a lot of emotional distress at this time. And in August of 1995, J. Howard Marshall dies at the age of 90. Anna said that she really wanted to be with him in his final days, but she had to make an appearance on the Howard Stern show, so she was not actually physically there when he died. She did call him one last time before he passed, though, and his caregiver said that when she told J. Howard that she was on the phone to talk to him, he just shook his head and didn't want to speak with her. Anna doesn't believe this at all, though. She said that he would never have hung up on her and that they were trying to keep him and her from speaking in his last days. They were only married for a year, but she was devastated when he passed. She said that it was so emotionally hard on her because he had known her when she was just a stripper, and he had loved her, and it was such a real relationship for her, and he had helped her to grow as a person, and she really had deep respect and love for him. Also, right after he died, apparently she had another seizure where she had to be taken to the hospital and sedated, and they say that this was because she just could not cope with the loss. So immediately after he passed, they had to go to court because Anna and Pierce both wanted his remains. However, he was cremated, so they were able to split the ashes and have separate funerals, and Anna Nicole was not invited to the Marshall family funeral. His caregiver also says that Anna never even picked up her half of the ashes for years, but she did have a funeral right after he died, so I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, because I would think they would have the ashes at the funeral, but I don't know. I have no idea what animal is in her hands in this shot, but this is her at the funeral that she hosted for J. Howard Marshall. And she does appear to be in a wedding dress, not the one that she actually wore on their wedding, but a wedding dress-esque. Everybody wore white, and she said that J. Howard had said that he did not want people to mourn, he wanted everyone to wear white and be joyful. She also performed Wind Beneath My Wings at his funeral for him. People did think this funeral was super odd, especially because she had it filmed, which I agree is a little bit odd, but I don't think the wearing white and singing Wind Beneath My Wings is that odd. Actually, I think it's a little bit cute. I mean, they got married a year ago, and she's wearing kind of a wedding outfit, which I think is a little bit sweet. And if he really did say that he wanted people to wear white, then she's just respecting his wishes, so I don't think I could say whether I really think it's that odd or not. But the real battle began when they read J. Howard Marshall's will. And it came as a shock to Anna and to a lot of people, I think, that Anna was not listed in the will at all. However, she said that J. Howard Marshall had promised her in their agreement to get married that he would give her half of his estate and promised to support her for life. Of course, his estate was billions of dollars, so I don't even know how much half of it would have been, but she actually was only trying to get spousal support, and that would have been half of his earnings during the time that they were married, which is only 13 months. Of course, his son Pierce disputed this and said that she had already gotten more than her fair share between the ranch, the house in LA, the furnishings for those houses, 2 cars, clothing, jewelry, paying her living expenses while he was alive, and all sorts of other gifts. Anna wasn't the only one written out of the will, though. J. Howard Marshall III, J. Howard's oldest son, was also not in the will. He was disowned by the family at some point because he had tried to take control of Koch Industries, but he claimed that he had also been promised a portion of the estate. And at this point, he joined with Nicole in their battle to get their portion of the estate because they both believed that Pierce had written them out of the will when he had legal power of attorney. So in the battle for J. Howard Marshall's will, there was 2 court cases going on, one in Texas and one in California. Anna did say that the court proceedings were very difficult for her, partially because she had dropped out of high school. She felt that she was semi-illiterate and that zeros were very difficult for her, particularly in like money issues, which this is all a money issue, so that's going to make things very difficult. And to be honest, some of this legal stuff was very hard for me to understand just researching it, so I understand that. Around this time, Anna was also dropped from the William Morris Agency, so things were a little bit tough for her right now. She wasn't getting a lot of work. She'd been dropped by her agency, which was going to make it a lot harder to get work. Her husband had just died, so she was in grieving, and in addition, she had all of these legal battles. She was also getting treatment for substance abuse. Apparently, she had a bunch of meds prescribed to her at this point, including for the seizures that she had been having and was still having. And of course, the tabloids were all over her for all of those reasons I just mentioned, plus saying stuff like, oh, has she gained weight? And is she partying right after her husband died? Making some stuff up, but of course, they were making her out to be this kind of just callous, unfeeling woman. And with all of this going on, this was the time when Anna decided to distance herself or cut off her family. And her half-sister Donna thinks that Anna felt that they were going to try and take her money, and that's why she did it, but it's unclear. They also think that Howard K. Stern, who she got close to at this time, he was one of her attorneys, was part of this movement away from her family. And her and Howard had actually met when he was doing contract work for her before all of this, but then he was one of her lawyers in this legal battle for a portion of the will, and eventually he was handling all of her legal affairs. He was her talent agent, he was her manager, everything. So they spent a lot of time together, and he played a huge part in her life. Also in August of 1995, the lawsuit that her housekeeper slash babysitter Maria had sued against her for SA was judged that Anna would have to pay her $850,000. And Anna had actually tried to countersue on that lawsuit and say that Maria had tried to kidnap Daniel, and she was also claiming that this was slander because it had never occurred, but since there was no evidence, that those claims were dismissed, and at this point Anna owes Maria $850,000. So in September 1995, Anna appears in the movie To the Limit. This was her first lead role, and it was directed by her friend Ray Martino. And in this role, she was really trying to change her appearance. She had mostly been getting like very small parts that were basically playing off of the dumb blonde role, so she wanted to change that. And after this movie, she actually moved in with Ray Martino on a platonic basis, as far as I can tell, just because she really wasn't doing well after the death of J. Howard Marshall. And then one day in November 1995, she's taking Daniel to school in the morning, and she tells Ray that she doesn't want to be alive anymore. Ray came back later and found her overdosed, and she was actually in a coma for some time. She did survive, but physically and mentally she was not doing well. There were other reports around this time that her bodyguard had also found her at one point trying to harm herself. So clearly things were really hard for her mentally right now. And she said she was just extremely stressed out between the tabloids and the paparazzi, all the legal stuff, losing her husband, and she couldn't deal anymore. She went to the Betty Ford Center for rehab after she got out of the hospital, and apparently at the beginning she was shaking so badly she could not even walk from withdrawals. In December of 1995, Anna is discharged from rehab and apparently feeling much healthier and much happier. And of course, the tabloids had to ruin that by writing a bunch of reports saying how she was fat and she didn't have her perfect body anymore. There were also some tabloid rumors, though, that she had a new man, that man being Keanu Reeves. Of course, this was never confirmed, and we really don't see that much mention of it past the few tabloid reports that there were, but if you want to believe it in your heart that her and Keanu Reeves had a thing, go for it. In January of 1996, though, Anna has to file for bankruptcy. After that $850,000 that she needed to pay Maria, that was too much for her. She didn't have enough money, and she had ran out of money since J. Howard Marshall had died. But because J. Howard Marshall's part of the will that Anna supposedly had a claim over would have helped her to stay out of bankruptcy and to pay Maria, the bankruptcy court got involved in the will dispute. But Pierce was not having this, and he filed a proof of claim within her case. These are legal terms that I have not a lot of idea of what they mean, but that Anna had defamed him when she was saying that he had changed the will when he had power of attorney and was just trying to take all of his father's money. Then Anna was obligated to file a counterclaim, and the counterclaim that she filed said that Pierce was trying to block J. Howard Marshall's wishes, which she had expected to be fulfilled in the will. And here's Anna Nicole in the July 1996 film Skyscraper. And it was also directed by Ray Martino, who again is one of her friends. And To the Limit had been being filmed while J. Howard Marshall was sick, whereas this one was filmed directly after the death, and apparently she was very depressed and not really ready to work in a very physically demanding role, which this was, but she really needed the money. Then in 1997, she appears in a Supertramp music video, and she releases My Heart Belongs to Daddy. This was a remake of a Marilyn Monroe song, and she really wanted to venture into music, so this was her start. Of course, the music video was very sexual, very seductive, very Marilyn, very Anna Nicole. And she promoted this song like it was her one and only job. She was always talking about it to the paparazzi. She would even stop her car and sing it out her car window at them. And also in the videos of her doing this, she is kind of making really weird facial expressions and just acting generally strange, which I guess you could chalk up to drugs, mental illness, just trying to get press, who knows. Unfortunately, it didn't really work in reviving her career, and supposedly at this point she had become pretty paranoid and was accusing her family of trying to steal her money whenever she did talk to them or they did try and reach out to her at all. In 1998, Pierce tries to move his claim about Anna from bankruptcy court into district court, but that claim is denied. And then Anna appears in the music video for Jumper by Third Eye Blind and in Sin City Spectacular, which is a TV show. And then this weird incident happens at a boy's bar mitzvah that Anna showed up to. Of course, I'm guessing that this 13-year-old boy had no idea that Anna Nicole Smith, the playmate, would be showing up to his bar mitzvah, but she did, and apparently she was being kind of like creepily close to him and acting very strange. You can kind of see it in this picture, but it's a video, so it's hard to kind of capture, but of course this became a scandal. And then at that point she decided to join Stars Against Scandals, which was an organization that basically stood up to tabloids. Then in September, Anna Nicole releases a tell-all film directed by her buddy Ray Martino called Anna Nicole Smith Exposed. It was based on her Playboy photo sessions loosely, and it was a very sexual video, and her family was pretty embarrassed by it back home. It started out by talking about her morning routine, which is to take care of herself, and it was pretty graphic. And small side note, her cousin said that her husband had a copy of this video, which is just ew. So in November of 1999, the bankruptcy court decides that they agree with Anna's claim that Pierce interfered with the will. So they decided to give Anna the amount that J. Howard Marshall's share of Koch Industries had risen in value during the time that they were married. So that's 13 months. And that amount was, hold your breath, $449,754,134. In 13 months? I mean, I knew he was loaded, but like, to me, I can't fathom that amount of money ever. She was also given punitive damages of $25 million, but minus anything she received from J. Howard Marshall's estate. So basically, Pierce could give her more money from his dad's will or just give it to her out of his own pocket, I think. Again, legal stuff that is a little bit complicated. Pierce, of course, started trying to get this case dismissed immediately. And basically the claim that Pierce Marshall made to try and get the case dismissed was that since Anna's claim was about a will dispute, bankruptcy court could not rule on that because probate court is the court you go to for will disputes. So bankruptcy court, not the same, can't decide that. But the bankruptcy court said no, because federal courts have jurisdiction over probate property, so the property within the will. And so this bankruptcy court case was in California. So at this point, Anna decided to drop out of the Texas probate court case, thinking that she had gotten plenty of money and she was good. The judge in the probate court did warn her, though, that if she dropped out of it, she was giving up any rights to J. Howard Marshall's estate that she might have gotten in that court case. And when she agreed to that, Pierce decided that he would file an amended counterclaim so that they could subpoena her, so she would come back to Texas and give a statement on it to officially have said that she released any right to claims on the will. And in the meantime, Anna Nicole in February of 2001 shoots again for Playboy. And up here we see a little reference, the $450 million Playmate from the bankruptcy court case. Then in July of 2001, the Houston court case begins with Anna Nicole being subpoenaed. I know that some people think the legal stuff is probably dry, but I really wanted to know what actually happened because it's kind of a messy situation. So if you do want to know what happened, I'm trying to break it down as simply as possible. And it is, there's some tea in the legal world. So just stick with me, okay? So in July of 2001, the Houston court case starts, and Anna, despite this picture, was not always dressed in the most appropriate of attire. And when I say that, I don't mean she was just dressed kind of casual. I mean, she literally wore a shirt that said spoiled across the front of it. And I swear, I cannot find a picture of it for the life of me, but I saw it with my own two eyes on video, okay? It happened. And I don't know why she would do that. And the prosecutor, Rusty Hardin, was extremely hard on Anna. If she would say that she loved Howard, he would say, "Oh, you've been taking acting lessons? Damn." And he got her to say some pretty damning things on the stand. For example, Pierce had cut her Christmas money down to $100,000, and she said, "Well, $100,000 isn't a lot for me." She also said at one point that it's expensive to be her, which, fair enough. She's super beautiful. Beauty can take a lot of money, so. They also discussed a tape recording that J. Howard Marshall had made shortly before his death, talking about Anna. And the direct quote that he said was this: "I want my wife to be supported by me. She's the light of my life. I don't think Pierce quite understands that. Maybe he's a little bit jealous." Which to me, that sounds pretty straightforward. Rusty, not so much though. And he asked Anna if she had taken off her top while he was recording that to make him say that. Of course, she said that wasn't true. And she was under oath because she was on the stand. But once the jury hears that, I mean, we're people. Once I heard that, I'm picturing it. So can't just erase those words once they've come out of someone's mouth. And it's obviously going to paint a picture for someone and maybe sway people. And Rusty actually said himself that he knew that she would kind of lose it after a couple days testifying, so he intentionally planned to keep her on the stand as long as possible so that she would break down and start to get angry and maybe act a little bit crazy. He termed it imploding because he was trying to get the jury to see her as a crazy person and entitled and spoiled and all of the above. And of course, this is how Rusty says her true character is, and Pierce agrees, of course, because Rusty's his lawyer. So they were trying to see her true character for the jury. So they finished up the probate court case, and the judge rules that Anna is entitled to nothing. Not only that, but he also decided that Anna needed to pay Pierce's legal expenses, which was well over $1 million. And after the jury had finished, they decided to sing a song that J. Howard Marshall would often sing to Anna while they were together and he was alive, to mock her. And in my opinion, that's not only disrespectful to Anna, but disrespectful to J. Howard Marshall and his memory, as well as the jury duty in and of itself, because that's supposed to be an unbiased process, and you're clearly showing that you had bias there. But because the bankruptcy court had said she was entitled to a certain amount of money, and the probate court had said that she wasn't, there was a contradiction there. They had to go to federal court. So then in March of 2002, Pierce goes back to district court to try and appeal the bankruptcy court's judgment, and they deny that. And basically what they said was that her counterclaim in bankruptcy court was compulsory because he had placed a claim on her in bankruptcy court, and that he had waited too long, essentially. That the timing seemed unfair considering she'd just been asked to state in the probate court that she had no right to the estate and had lost everything. So they denied it. However, they did decide that Anna Nicole's claim really wasn't part of the original bankruptcy court reason that they were there. So they vacated the bankruptcy court's judgment and decided that it was just more of a proposal, maybe an option. So then they reviewed the entire matter themselves in district court and decided that they did still side with Anna Nicole, but it was kind of a compromise because this time it was only $88 million. And now we take a quick break from the legal, and here is Anna Nicole on the Larry King Live interview that she did in May 2002. And of course, first they asked her, what did you see in J. Howard Marshall? And she said that she saw a sick man who took really good care of her and was very sweet, and that on her part there was no physical attraction, but that she loved him, but she wasn't in love with him, even though he was in love with her and physically attracted to her. She really spoke of him more as like a caregiver figure than a husband. He also asked her specifically about her sexuality, and he tried to get as specific as possible, but she kept just acting confused. I think maybe she knew that there were certain words he couldn't say on air, so she could just dance around it, which is smart of her, honestly. And Sandy said she was not confused by that question. She didn't want to answer it. Sandy's her girlfriend, if you'll remember. Ex-girlfriend. And in August of 2002, the world blesses us with the Anna Nicole Show. She had become super popular in the tabloids, so it only made sense that she would get her own reality show, and it was actually the highest cable rating for a reality show at the time. And strangely enough, it premiered on the 7th anniversary of J. Howard Marshall's death. And it was focused on her private life, including her attorney, Howard K. Stern, or maybe her boyfriend. She definitely dated a lot of other people, but they claim that they were together, but maybe like in a non-sexual way. I don't know. It's very confusing. Her son, her assistant, her interior decorator, and her cousin were also all featured on the show. Apparently on this show, she said that she loved the paparazzi because she didn't get a lot of attention growing up, so she loved getting attention now. And I don't know that that was actually a true statement because I'm sure, everybody likes the attention a little bit. Come on. But I think that she was also getting ripped on by the tabloids so much at that point. There's no way that she still loved them. And while her show was going on, there was also a VH1 special made about her, which you can watch on YouTube. It's called Dark Roots. And it features mainly interviews with her family, Ray Martino, and some people on J. Howard Marshall's side. And in it, her cousin said that she really missed her and she really wanted to see her, so she cooked up a plan to go to LA and meet her. She was really hoping that when she showed up, Anna would be super excited to see her after all that time, but that did not happen at all. The producers immediately kicked her off the property. And then her cousin left a letter with the production company and gets really pissed that Anna doesn't want to see her and says she's not her role model anymore. And on the other side, we see on Anna Nicole's show that she's saying that her family effed her over and that making fun of what they look like and just generally being rude about them and saying she does not like them. She did end up going to dinner with her cousin though, and it was filmed for Anna's show, but not for the VH1 special. But apparently it seems like her cousin really was trying to get the real Anna out, but she wasn't really interested. But then her cousin was on a couple other episodes. There they are together. And her cousin also apologized for saying that Anna wasn't her role model anymore and a bunch of other stuff that she had said when Anna didn't let her in. But she got a lot of hate for the way that she appeared in the show when she went back to Mahia. People described watching the Anna Nicole show as like watching a train wreck, in that they felt like she was kind of past her prime at this point. There was a time when everyone idolized her. She was a supermodel. She had tons of money. And now she's at a point when she's battling all of these legal things. People have trashed her constantly, and she's struggling, clearly, and it was hard to watch. It also seems like they were trying to make her come off as dumb, like uneducated, and that she had tried to get all of this money out of J. Howard Marshall and it hadn't worked out, and now she's just this bimbo hanging around. And to be clear, I think that that was probably the production company's intent. She also did seem like she might be on drugs in a lot of the clips from it. She just doesn't seem like she's all there and like she's struggling to keep herself together. And regardless of if it was drugs or just her or mental illness or whatever it may be, it was hard to watch because she was clearly struggling. And regardless of whatever fame or fortune she had had in the past, and even if people did know who she was, like she'd always wanted, and she was getting that attention, she was clearly struggling. And a lot of people also felt like it was very exploitative that they were making this show at all, knowing that the reaction would mostly be hate watching, and that just wasn't appropriate for a production company to take advantage of her like that, knowing that she wasn't really viewed positively in the public's eye at this point. And even though it was really popular at first, a lot of people stopped watching by the second season, which I think probably shows that some of them were hate watching. Unfortunately, this also had an effect on her son Daniel. Apparently, people at school would bully him for the way that his mom looked on the show, and that really made him distance himself from his mom, and also he was hiding drugs from her, supposedly, as in her own drugs. Also around this time, Howard K. Stern, her lawyer, decided to dissolve his previous law firm and start up a talent agency for Anna Nicole under the name Hot Smoochy Lips. And he had no other clients. It was just Anna. So basically at this point, he was just helping her through everything in her life. He was managing her entire world. And I think depending on how you look at it, he was either helping her with everything or he was controlling everything. So in May 2003, Anna Nicole meets Larry Burkhead at the Kentucky Derby where he was a photographer. He also took pictures for her at a kids' charity event, and he said he really loved seeing the raw, real side of her there. And they were super into each other to the point where he started living with her shortly after they started dating. Unfortunately, in June 2003, the Anna Nicole show gets canceled. It only had 3 seasons, but around this time she was definitely stepping away from the media more, just trying to stay out of it a little bit. She'd gotten a lot of negative attention by this point, so I think she was a little bit tired. And the last episode of the Anna Nicole show premiered in October of 2004. In August of 2003, she plays in Wasabi Tuna, where she's just an over-the-top version of herself, and Howard K. Stern is apparently also in this movie in drag, which is interesting. Then in October 2003, Anna is back in full force with Trim Spa, and she became the spokeswoman for this. It's a diet pill. She said it helped her to lose 69 pounds, and she described this as her renaissance, where she was feeling so much healthier and happier, and she was back in the limelight. In 2004, her son Daniel goes to college in LA at Valley College. He was still living with Anna, but they were much more distant since the TV show, and Anna thought that there was something up with him, and she found out that there was a breakup that had happened to him. Then one night, Daniel stayed out all night, and Anna got pretty pissed and kicked him out of the house, so he went and started living with Ray Martino, her friend. In 2004, Anna Nicole appears in Kanye West's, the fact that I even need to say West, Kanye's new workout plan music video. And then in November, she introduces him at the AMAs, and things were weird. To start off with, she was just slurring her speech and exhibiting a lot of odd behavior, like she just wasn't fully there. It was clear from the time that she walked out on that stage, she was very like loosey-goosey, but it just got worse and worse. According to Larry Burkhead, she had actually had 2 seizures the night before, and he had begged her to cancel, but she said no. And then she took something to help her stay up all night because she was super nervous. And Larry did not specify what it was, but that it was prescribed to her, but she probably took a higher dosage than needed. And she was super nervous because Trim Spa was asking her to advertise the product in this extremely small speech, which is already a nerve-wracking experience because you're at the AMAs. So while she was on stage, she threw up her arms and said, "Like my body," and then pointed at her necklace, which said Trim Spa on it. But I don't think a lot of people got it because, I mean, it's hard to tell what that says. But I guess that was her attempt at pitching it. Overall, it was just kind of a train wreck, and presenters throughout the night made fun of her afterwards. In December of 2004, Pierce appeals the $88 million decision from 2002. Basically, his claim was that the probate court was not under federal jurisdiction. So the place where they were doing the will dispute, not under federal jurisdiction. So she could not make a counterclaim in bankruptcy court on that probate court because it's not under federal jurisdiction. And they decided to reverse the decision of the federal judge for the $88 million and decided that federal courts do not have the jurisdiction to overrule the probate court decision. Meanwhile, in 2005, Anna stars in Illegal Aliens, which was a parody film, and it actually wasn't released until 2007, which was 3 months after she had died, actually. Then in March of 2005, she appears at the MTV Australia VMAs, where she basically does a spoof of the Janet Jackson nip slip, and she just straight up pulls down her top, and there's MTV logos over her nipples. And straight from nipples to the Supreme Court, in September 2005, the Supreme Court hears the appeal from 2004. And this took them a while to rule on, but the U.S. Solicitor General at the time was on Anna Nicole's side because they wanted to expand federal court jurisdiction over state probate disputes, like will disputes. And while all of that in the Supreme Court is going on, in November of 2005, Anna's biological mother hasn't seen Daniel for quite some time because Anna is keeping her away from him. And as we remember, she's not super fond of her biological mother. However, Donna, Anna's half-sister, was able to kind of pull together a TV appearance where they could meet together. Anna's mother, however, decides that she won't do any TV appearance unless she's getting paid at least $20,000 for an interview. Which, like, if you wanted to see your grandson, why are you haggling on prices right now? Donna did say, though, that this was very like Anna's mom to do this, and that her and Anna were actually similar in this way, that money was very important to them, in Donna's opinion. Then in April of 2006, Anna is sent to the hospital because she's reportedly pregnant and in withdrawals from drugs. And Anna Nicole Smith, part 28. So Anna goes to the hospital. Apparently she had been taking Xanax and methadone regularly, but she decided to just go cold turkey because allegedly she's pregnant and she doesn't want it to harm her unborn baby. I can definitely understand that logic, but apparently it's not the correct thing to do because you'll go into withdrawals. So the doctor at the hospital puts her back on methadone and starts trying to wean her off of Xanax. The doctor thought it was weird, though, that she was on such strong drugs. She felt like by the pain that Anna was describing, she didn't need any sort of opioids to treat it. So she contacted Anna's regular doctor, who agreed, okay, yeah, we'll wean her off the drugs. But Anna was not super enthused by this, even though she was the one who had just tried to go cold turkey. The doctor was also saying that it was very hard to get Anna to answer medical questions about herself, and it was almost like she was putting on a show. That's how she described it. The next day that they're in the hospital, apparently Anna starts having hallucinations and is pretending to floss but doesn't have floss, which doesn't immediately alarm the doctor because it's somewhat common in patients who have been taking drugs and there might be psychiatric effects. But when she goes to see Anna, she's acting super strange and like angry, won't make eye contact, very odd. At that point, the doctor suggests that maybe Anna should receive treatment for addiction and substance abuse, and Anna straight up refuses and decides to leave the hospital. Ultimately, the doctor came away saying that she felt that Anna probably had BPD and that she was overusing pain medications that were probably too strong for her anyways, at least based on the pain that she was saying that she was experiencing. In May 2006, Anna gets some good news, though. The Supreme Court rules in favor of her. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg actually wrote the opinion on it. She said that it wasn't about giving her any money or any portion of the will. It was more about having the right to pursue it in federal court. They didn't make any money decisions on it, though. They just said that the district court had the right to decide whether the bankruptcy court was able to act on it, whether it was a key issue in that area, so they could figure it out. Then in June 2006, Anna announces that she's pregnant. Apparently she was telling people that it was Larry Burkhead's kid for a while and they had seemed really happy together, but by the time she announces it, they have broken up. And we don't know for sure what happened, but Larry has said that it ended because he was really worried about her lifestyle and how it would affect the baby, and that pissed her off. And then suddenly, for the last part of her pregnancy, she moves to the Bahamas with Howard K. Stern, her lawyer slash talent agent slash everything in between. And many people thought that she was moving to the Bahamas specifically to escape paternity claims that Larry might have. So Anna Nicole Smith is in the Bahamas for the second part of her pregnancy, and in June 2006, Pierce Marshall dies at 67. However, his wife keeps the case going for him after death. In July of 2006, Daniel is hospitalized twice. He's still living with Ray Martino at this point, and he starts complaining that his stomach and back are hurting, and Ray also noticed that he had lost a lot of weight, so they start to get concerned. He went to the hospital, was discharged, and then he was feeling bad again, so he had to go back for 3 days this time. And after this, Ray found Zoloft in Daniel's bag, which, plenty of people are prescribed Zoloft, but in this case, it was actually prescribed to one of Anna's former employees, not to Daniel, so that's a red flag. Then in September of 2006, Anna Nicole gives birth to Danny Lynn Hope Marshall Stern, and she puts Howard K. Stern as the father on the birth certificate, and they did have this kid in the Bahamas. And when Daniel heard that Danny Lynn had been born, he rushed to the Bahamas to meet her and to see his mom, and he was visiting Anna Nicole in the hospital. She had fallen asleep next to him, and she woke up, and he had passed away. Of course, she was super panicked. They rushed to get him help, but it was too late. And she said that actually at the time she thought that she was being pranked or something. It just did not seem real at all to her. So Daniel had OD'd, and it was a mix of Lexapro, Zoloft, and methadone. Lexapro he had been taking for a while. Zoloft apparently he had taken because he was anxious about the flight over to the Bahamas. And methadone, unclear. Of course, we know that Anna Nicole had been taking methadone for a long time, but he was not prescribed methadone, so the question was, who gave it to him? And a lot of people were saying that they were prepared to testify in court that they had seen Howard K. Stern give Daniel the methadone. There were also a bunch of reports that after Daniel had died, Howard went straight back to their house in the Bahamas, searched Danny's things, found drugs in his pockets, and then immediately flushed them down the toilet. All this aside, Anna Nicole was, of course, absolutely devastated. I mean, they were very close, and I can't even imagine the emotional strain of having put a child into the world and having your other child taken out of the world within a matter of days. And she said that if it wasn't for Howard and Danny Lynn, she wouldn't even be there anymore. And at the funeral, she actually apparently tried to climb inside the coffin with him, saying that if he was going to be buried, she wanted to be buried with him. And back in Mahia, Billy, his dad, who hadn't seen him since he was 2, found out via the news and held a memorial service for him. So in September, shortly after Danny Lynn was born and Daniel died, Anna Nicole and Howard K. Stern have a commitment ceremony. Basically, they did the vows, they did the rings, but it wasn't legally marriage. Of course, people found this to be super weird timing because she had just lost her son and also just given birth. But Anna Nicole's lawyer said they needed a little adrenaline boost because things have been so hectic and devastating in their life recently. And I mean, I guess grief bonds you, but it does seem odd timing. And what was even more odd was that they sold the photos of the ceremony to People magazine for $1 million. But mostly, many people felt like this commitment ceremony was another effort to keep Larry Burkhead from claiming paternity over Danny Lynn after she had just put Howard on the birth certificate. And I know we kind of glazed over that in the last part, but it is interesting that she put him on the birth certificate because up until then, we had no idea they were even in a relationship, really. I mean, it didn't seem like it. Until, of course, they moved to the Bahamas and announced they were having a kid. In late 2006, Anna Nicole gets granted permanent resident status in the Bahamas, and that was because she had a $900,000 mansion from a former boyfriend named Ben Thompson. Unfortunately, the government official who granted her the permanent resident status was seen in these photos with her that made it out to the press. Of course, people were like, I see why you want her here, but that's definitely not part of your government job. What's going on here? And he resigned shortly after. There was also rumors that Daniel had said before his death that he didn't think that Anna Nicole moving to the Bahamas was a good idea and that he was wary of the people that his mother was associating with, which is very strange. And specifically, since they're moving to the Bahamas, I'm thinking he's maybe talking about Howard, if this is true that he said that. So it makes you wonder what's going on there. But of course, she seems to be happy with Howard. Back to the house, though, which this is the house. In November of 2006, Ben Thompson actually comes out and says that he had loaned Anna Nicole the money to buy the mansion, but it wasn't a gift, and she had never repaid him, so he wanted back that property. He sued to evict her in court, and Anna never responded to the eviction notice, so that judgment was pushed through, and she was evicted. And after they got the mansion back, Ben Thompson and his son-in-law were cleaning it out, and they found methadone in the fridge. They also found B12 injectables and Slim Fast. What a diet. In November of 2006, Anna's hospitalized for a collapsed lung and pneumonia, and she makes it through, she's fine, but just another dramatic event in an already very tumultuous year. Also in 2006, Anna meets this couple in the Bahamas who she loves. So this is King and this is Bridget, and they would take her out on the boat with them sometimes. She found it so peaceful and calming, and they were also very calm souls, so she really liked being around them and kind of saw them as parent figures. And at that point, she actually decided that she wanted to buy her own boat. So she had found one in Florida, and her and Howard went to Florida to buy it, along with Bridget and King, I believe. But right before that, in February, Anna and Trim Spa are sued for false advertising. Apparently the claims were misleading and people were suing them for deceptive business practices because the diet pill didn't work, which doesn't surprise me at all because most diet pills do not work. But of course they disputed these claims, and she stuck by her claim that she lost like 60 something pounds off of it. So then also in February of 2007, they go to see the boat in Florida. And apparently right before they left, she had taken another shot of human growth hormone and vitamin B12 in her ass because she was taking that to help her maintain her weight, supposedly. Then on the flight, she started saying that her side was hurting and she was feeling sick. And by the time she got to the hotel, she had a fever of like 105 degrees, super high, and Howard suggested that she go to the hospital, which is probably a good idea. She said no. And they think she was probably afraid to go just because of the tabloids and the paparazzi. She didn't want to deal with that. And they said she definitely seemed sick over the next few days, and she also had visible abscesses on her butt from the injections. And I think we know where this is going at this point, so I'll say she could not even stand the morning of her death, and Howard had to help her to the bathroom. But he left a couple hours later for the appointment to look at the boat since Anna Nicole wouldn't be able to go. However, that was what was said at the time. Howard later said that she seemed like she was getting better on the day that he went to see the boat. And that doesn't really sound like better to me, so there's a little of a conflicting story there. So apparently Bridget discovered her dead and then told the bodyguard's wife to call 911, but instead she called the bodyguard, who then called Howard, and at the same time, the bodyguard's wife was trying to resuscitate her, and Howard called 911. And like I said, they tried to revive her, but they were unsuccessful, and she was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital. So Anna Nicole died at the Hard Rock Hotel in Florida, and she was deemed dead upon arrival at the hospital. It was an overdose. It was deemed accidental, and there was multiple things in her system. There was chloral hydrate, which are sleeping meds, Klonopin, Ativan, Cerex, Valium, Benadryl, and Topamax. Of course, none of those are illegal, so that's something, but apparently the sleeping med is toxic in the system when it's mixed with the Klonopin, the Ativan, the Cerex, and the Valium. And methadone was actually not deemed to be a contributing factor, even though that's what everyone suspected her of abusing, because it was only present in her stomach bile, which means that she'd probably took it a few days before, but not recently enough to be part of the overdose. And they did say that another contributor to the death may have been the vitamin B12 and human growth hormone that she was injecting into her butt. The real issue came because apparently 8 of the drugs in her system were actually prescribed to Howard K. Stern, not to Anna. 2 of them were under the name Alex Katz, which is not Anna, and 1 of them was written to her psychiatrist, who was also one of her friends, and all of the prescriptions were written by that psychiatrist. So none of the drugs in her system were prescribed to her. And some people did think that it was not accidental that she wanted to end her own life, especially because of the rumors that she was found naked with a sheet over her, which is the same way that Marilyn was found as well, which obviously she really loved Marilyn Monroe. A detective testified, though, that she was actually found in a coma-like state under a pale blue comforter on the bed, and she was covered in her own feces, which is not nearly as glamorous, but definitely a more realistic look at what that's like. When she died, though, Howard said that he felt like she really died emotionally when Daniel died, and a big part of herself was just gone after that day. So maybe it was part of the grief that took her away. There was also a debate over where she would be buried, but they decided on the Bahamas next to Daniel. So then yet another court case begins against Howard K. Stern and her doctors about overprescribing medication. So Anna had died from an overdose, and none of the drugs that were in her system were prescribed to her. So Howard, as well as her doctors, were facing some overprescribing charges. And there had been claims when Danny died that Howard was keeping medication hidden from Anna, but would dole it out to her because he didn't want her to overdose. So he was kind of keeping her in check, I guess. But for all of that, apparently Howard also admitted to this source that he had all the medications prescribed to other people so they couldn't be tracked back to Anna. And again, we don't know this to be true. This was a source said. Their main claim was that she was a co-conspirator in the overprescribing because she was asking for the drugs, which seems legitimate. And they also said that they didn't realize that she was addicted or the extent of her use, and they were just trying to help her get through the hard time that she was going through, and they thought that they were helping her with normal comfort, and they didn't realize how much drugs she was using to get through it as well. So later on, we get this interview with Howard Stern on Larry King Live. He went on to set the record straight after Rita Cosby, who's a news anchor, released a book about Anna Nicole, and he actually ended up suing Rita for slandering her, and he sued a bunch of other people for slandering Anna Nicole too. First, there are a bunch of pictures of Anna Nicole that he said made her look like she was on drugs, but were actually just bad photos of her, just the kind of in-between takes, photos where you're like one eye's closed and you're smiling weird and whatever. But it was just a bad photo, and there's plenty of good photos in that set. There was also a picture that was sold or leaked of Anna with Daniel's dead body, which seems really weird. And Howard took that photo and he said, yeah, I took it. She wanted me to take the picture to just prove to herself that it was real. And I really didn't want to do it, but at that point I would have done anything for her. And that seems strange maybe, but I'm not going to judge the way that she grieves when she loses her son. He also said that while he was living with Anna and she was paying his rent, buying him clothes, whatever else, he didn't let her pay him any fees for legal fees, talent agency fees, anything like that. There's also rumors that there was a gay sex tape between Howard and Larry Burkhead, which obviously was not true. He said that. He also said that she never did drugs unless she was prescribed them from reputable doctors, which we know that they weren't prescribed to her actually, but... And he said that they were in a relationship for a long time and he was very confident that Danny Lynn was his kid. Unfortunately, he was not the only one who thought that though. Right after they had gone boat hunting and Anna Nicole had died, Howard went and picked up Danny Lynn about 3 days after that. And some people found it odd that he waited the 3 days. I don't find it that odd because I'm sure she was being taken care of by someone and he was in an extremely stressful situation. And beyond wanting to know who Danny Lynn's father was, the paternity battle is important in knowing who's going to get Anna Nicole's estate because most of it was going to go to Danny Lynn, obviously, and whoever her caretaker was. Plus, anything from the J. Howard Marshall case would be going to Danny Lynn now because it was going to be taken on her behalf. So first, Larry Burkhead claims paternity and files a lawsuit to find out who the real father is. And of course, we know the birth certificate lists Howard K. Stern. And Larry had always been saying that he thought Danny Lynn was his and requesting a DNA test, but Anna had always said no while she was alive. He even said that he thought that Anna Nicole might be dyeing Danny Lynn's hair, like as an infant, to make it look more like Howard. But of course, Howard thought that was ridiculous. But after Anna's death, his lawyer filed the lawsuit for paternity and they got DNA tests done. Then this dude, Frederick Prinz von Anhalt, admits to having an affair with Anna. He was Zsa Gabor's husband, and said that he could be the father of Danny Lynn. And then we get Alexander Dank, who was her former bodyguard and a chef, who says that they also had an affair and he could be the dad. And then Mark Hatton, another ex-boyfriend, claims that he gave her frozen sperm. And then Donna, her half-sister, says, well, J. Howard Marshall could be the father because Anna said that she was given frozen sperm from him. And I think Donna's aim in that was to just make sure that all the money went to Danny Lynn, maybe. And it was also a smart move for the J. Howard Marshall case in Danny Lynn's behalf. But we had a real Mamma Mia situation going on, and we needed to find out who the father was. In April 2007, surprise, Larry Burkhead is the father, the DNA test shows. At this point, he filed for an amended birth certificate, and he said he was so ecstatic when he found out, and he turned around and thought he was going to see Anna, and she wasn't there, which is so sad. Also, look how cute Danny Lynn is. And Howard Stern did not contest the rulings at all. Maybe he was super sad to find out that his girlfriend had a bunch of affairs, or maybe she was never his girlfriend and it was always just about keeping her estate intact and keeping Larry Burkhead, her ex, from Danny. Because maybe you just don't want your ex in your life. After the DNA test revealed that Larry Burkhead was the father, Howard Stern did not contest it, and actually, he was really sweet. He taught Larry her routine, how to feed her, how to change her, and was very supportive of him always. And Larry has said that he is as loyal to Larry now as he is to Danny Lynn and as he was to Anna Nicole. Anna Nicole's mother actually tried to submit an appeal to get the DNA test redone. I guess she wanted some different result. I'm not really sure why, because she wasn't close with Anna Nicole. My best bet is something money related. And Howard Stern has remained the trustee of the estate and the attorney for Danny Lynn, so he's still very much involved in their lives and helping them. In 2008, Anna Nicole's mom decides to sue for defamation, and she sues TMZ, CBS, Art Harris, Lyndall Harrington, who are both reporters, and Larry Burkhead. And she said that they were trying to ruin her reputation with emails and blog posts that they were posting. And she really didn't like this because she wanted custody and visitation rights for Danny Lynn. Lyndall Harrington actually did not turn over her computer, though, when asked for evidence. And apparently she claimed that it was stolen, so she couldn't comply. And she actually was jailed for not complying. And a lot of people think that that robbery was just staged. However, the lawsuit got dropped because TMZ, CBS, and a bunch of the other ones won their summary judgment. So there really wasn't anything there. And Larry ended up with sole custody of Danny Lynn. And as I said earlier, after her death, the case for J. Howard Marshall's will continued on with Pierce Marshall's wife and on behalf of Danny Lynn. In March of 2010, the appeal in district court upholds the verdict that Anna Nicole receives nothing because they said that her counterclaim to Pierce's original claim in bankruptcy court was not close enough in subject matter. They also said that the probate court was doing their job right when they issued their verdict, and that the district court should never have overruled that decision and given the $88 million decision. So then they appealed the decision again, but it was denied. And then in September 2010, they took the case to the Supreme Court again. So in June 2011, the Supreme Court makes a decision. And they ruled that the bankruptcy court was not allowed to rule on a non-bankruptcy issue. Therefore, Anna Nicole and Danny Lynn, in this case, do not get any of the estate. After that, Anna Nicole Smith's estate files a motion in district court for $44 million in damages from Pierce Marshall's estate. But in 2014, they're denied that. And since her death, there has been a book, a movie and an opera written about Anna. She's a very controversial figure, and she has a very interesting life story. Danny Lynn is 15 now. She's still living with Larry. They live in Kentucky, and she obviously looks a lot like her mother, but apparently is also a lot like her in personality as well. Most recently, in 2020, Howard K. Stern actually gave a bunch of Anna's old things to Danny Lynn because the storage unit was getting too expensive, which is kind of a weird reason to do it, but at least Danny Lynn gets a lot of memories from her mother. And as you probably know, this is Sydney Sweeney, not Anna Nicole, but she is the face of the Guess campaign for a line inspired by Anna Nicole. And it's very interesting because Anna Nicole's Guess shoot was inspired by Jane Mansfield, and now Sydney Sweeney's doing one inspired by Anna Nicole. It's kind of awesome to see that kind of stuff happen. And with that, we have finished another series, and this is definitely my longest one yet in terms of researching and recording. There's just so much information out there about her life, and it's hard to know what's true and what's not. I hope I have done a good job here. If there's stuff that you want to add in the comments or want to clarify, feel free. I know that I am not infallible on this, so go for it.
If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment any additions you might have or any thoughts or opinions. I'd love to hear them, as well as any series suggestions or new video suggestions in general. And if you want to see more of me and more of my series, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next week with another one.